Welcome to the first installment of Reading Between the Lines. In this video, I'm going to read a random CBC article, and after every paragraph or so, I'll have my commentary and tell you what I really think about it and how most of it is just pure nonsense. The article I'm reading is from the CBC. Federal government proposes stricter bail system in new bill. This is from May 16th, 2023, and this is in regards to Bill C-48, which was passed on January 4th, 2024. And I guess we'll know when those statistics come out for 2024 if any of the things that they talked about in this bill actually did anything, or if things just kept getting more dangerous here in Canada. The federal government is proposing changes to the country's bail system that would make it harder for those accused of certain offenses to be released on bail. Somehow I doubt that. Bill C-48 would amend the criminal code so that those charged with a serious offense involving a weapon, one with a maximum penalty of 10 years imprisonment, who were convicted of a similar offense within the last 5 years, will face a reverse onus to get bail. Reverse onus means the accused would have to show why they should be released instead of the prosecution having to prove that they should remain behind bars. So my question is how come reverse onus isn't the standard? I feel like it used to be the standard. You know, if somebody has committed multiple violent offenses, wouldn't you just assume that they're going to do it again? Why should you have to prove anything? They should have to prove that they're not going to continue to commit assaults or armed robberies or whatever it is that they've been doing. So I don't exactly know why this is some sort of groundbreaking idea. The proposed law would also expand the use of reverse onus for firearm and intimate partner violent offenses and allow courts to take into consideration community safety and an accused history of violence when making a bail decision. Once again, why did we ever get away from taking into account an accused history of violence or community safety? Isn't that just common sense? Wasn't that the standard for years and decades and decades? It just seems like in the last, couple of decades, with all this woke and liberal nonsense, that for some reason we don't do that anymore. The judges don't do that anymore. Why do we need a bill for common sense? The goal of Bill C-48 is improving public safety, Justice Minister David Lametti told a news conference Tuesday. I sure hope it is. I mean, what else would be the reason if it wasn't for public safety? Captain Obvious. At the same time, we want to make sure that these law reforms do not make things worse for Indigenous people, Black people, and other vulnerable groups who we know are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. I know this is a priority that my provincial and territorial counterparts share. The reason why they're overrepresented is that they commit more crime. And you treating them differently than everyone else is racism. I shouldn't get a longer jail sentence for committing the same crime as somebody that's part of a minority group. I don't know why you're still considering that. That's part of the reason why before this bill came in, and after, to be honest, why the bail system is not working. Because you're taking those things into account. And to be honest, when you let people from minority groups out and they continue to reoffend, you're actually reinforcing those bad stereotypes, aren't you? Just think about it. Lametti introduced the legislation in the House of Commons Tuesday morning. The bill is the federal government's response to chiefs of police, premiers, and conservative MPs pushing for stricter bail laws. Why do that many people have to complain before you just use common sense? Lametti said the proposed changes are the result of consultations earlier this year with the premiers, law enforcement, and other stakeholders. Yeah, you just said that. Canada's bail system came under heavy scrutiny after Constable Gregors, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce this, Prishchala of the Ontario Provincial Police was killed late last year. I'm not going to read the rest of that paragraph, but I do remember that case, and, you know, it's an unfortunate tragedy, but why does it take the murder of a police officer to get anybody's attention? Are not all the other victims of violent crime just as important? Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino said the bail system needs changes. Once again, Captain Obvious. We must strengthen our bail system to keep communities safer, he told the news conference. Yeah, but you guys are the ones who ruined the bail system to begin with, but you're not talking about that, are you? For workers riding a bus or a subway, for parents who send their kids to school, for families who are going for a walk in their own neighborhood, this legislation is about them and indeed all Canadians so that we can keep them safe. The government passed a previous bail reform bill, Bill C-75, in 2019. The bill said that judges should give particular consideration when deciding on bail to the circumstances of Aboriginal accused and accused who belong to vulnerable population that is overrepresented in the criminal justice system. And that's why we have a problem, because you guys are not treating everybody equally. You're letting certain people, it's like a two-tier system, kind of like they have in the UK. They're basically admitting it right here. They have a racist policy. Lamenti said he hopes the new requirement that courts consider community safety and the accused past violence will crack down on crime. I've already said it. I'm going to say it again. Why did you ever get away from those common sense policies? And you know what's funny is I've had people tell me that this isn't the federal government's fault, that this is a provincial issue, or it's the judges, that the federal government has nothing to do with these people getting out on bail. And it's like, well, of course it is. They're admitting it in this article. And the reason why, I mean, yes, there are activist judges as well, but the reason why these judges are, acting the way they are is because they've been told to act that way. This article is really long, so I'm going to skip a large portion of it. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees that anyone who is charged with a crime will not be denied reasonable bail without just cause. Well, I do have a problem there, because that word reasonable is basically changes depending on who is deciding what reasonable is. So if you have an activist judge that thinks that it's reasonable to let somebody who's had 50 convictions, like that guy I did that video on a while back, the guy who was smashing into the police cruisers in a stolen vehicle, and he was out on bail for a similar offense. Remember that guy? Right? Some judge thought it was reasonable to let him out. So I really have a problem with this word reasonable. It seems to kind of depend a lot on who's deciding what reasonable is. Poilievre blasts bail bill. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said the proposed bail reforms don't go far enough. Pierre pointed out that Mackenzie was released on bail. Mackenzie is Indigenous, and the judge took into account his background when granting bail. And the bill that we're talking about here isn't going to change that. Doesn't sound like it anyways. Quote for Pierre: today, Liberals announced measures on bail that would have continued to release the same killer who killed Constable Przyszczola. Poilievre told a news conference. This bill does not raise the bar. It simply puts in a bunch of lower bars underneath the bar that is already there. In other words, Mackenzie would have been released by this regime. Poilievre said he wants to see a bail system that would guarantee repeat violent offenders are kept behind bars. A common sense conservative government will reverse Trudeau's catch and release, he said. And I think I'm going to stop the article there. Obviously, that's what we want. We want a system where you only get a few chances to commit violent offenses, and then you get locked away for a very, very long time. I don't know what the magic number is. It could be like a 3 strikes rule, or a 2 strikes, or a 4 strikes rule. I'll let somebody that probably knows more about criminality than me figure that out. But certainly it shouldn't be a 50 strikes rule or a 25 strikes rule or something like that, because we've seen how that works out. But anyways, I hope you kind of got an idea. This is a CBC article. We know that it's pretty much pure propaganda. Nowhere in there did they really criticize the Liberals' past bail reforms, which basically made the bail system act this way to begin with. Nowhere did they criticize the idea that minority groups should be treated differently than everyone else. And while they did have some quotes from Poilievre, they didn't in any way praise him or give him any credit for maybe having a little bit more common sense. I don't see this, even the structure of the article, in my opinion, is kind of it's kind of written in a way that you get a certain impression. It's kind of hard to explain, but you get a certain impression when you read it. They did bring up that, I think it was like Bill C-75. Yeah, the previous Bill C-75. They did mention it, but like I had to read halfway through the article before they brought it up. They could have talked about Bill C-75 and how that brought in considerations for minorities and things like that. They could have brought that into the article near the top of the article. Instead, they know that most people aren't going to read that far into the article. And so most people aren't going to realize that it was the Liberal government that brought those changes in to begin with. So anyways, hopefully you were slightly entertained and hopefully you learned a few things. Like I said, this bill was passed in January 4th, 2024. So we'll see if this bill did anything at all to reduce violent crime. I have a feeling it hasn't, because I've been seeing probably more, like especially home invasions and things like that, I kind of keep track of. And, you know, YouTube has been suggesting these videos to me at a level even I haven't been used to. I would say it seems like every couple of days I'm getting another video about yet another home invasion or some sort of ridiculously violent criminal offense or act. And yeah, I have a feeling that, you know, they basically brought in this bill thinking that they could make a few small, tiny changes, but they're still leaving in the idea that minority groups should be treated differently than everyone else. And like I said, that in and of itself is the government acting in a racist way. And in this case, it's racist against anybody that doesn't fit into one of these minority groups. Or I guess it could be sexist or, you know, some other category of ism. But yeah, it seems like there's this two-tier system where certain groups can get away with almost anything. And then other people, they have to face the full consequences for their actions. And like I mentioned, I'm gonna close with this. Like I mentioned, when you allow minority groups to get out on bail and habitually reoffend over and over again, you're actually reinforcing the stereotype that you're trying to prevent. So if you're liberal, you might want to listen to me. Take care, guys.